What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from the Quartering, and the everything is political weirdos are at it again. See, I think a lot of this core issue, the divide between the gaming community and political weirdos who also play video games, is that people that maintain this position, we've seen it with Call of Duty, we've seen it with Battlefield, we're seeing it now with the re-release of 6 Days in Fallujah. By the way, the game 6 Days in Fallujah was originally slated for release in 2010, but was canceled due to uproarious controversy. Perhaps it was, how do you say, too soon, as it follows a high-stress clearing of the city by armed forces, and I guess people didn't like that. There were questions about whether or not it was appropriate, especially given that it was based on true events and it was so recent. I don't have a strong take on that. I think that obviously you can make whatever game you want to make and people don't have to purchase it if they don't like it. And this particular game does look pretty good, although I have friends that served, and I'm not sure how they would feel about it. I don't ask because that's for them, but I can tell you this, almost all of them play Call of Duty. Now, this one might strike a little too close to home because it was such a brutal task that led to huge swaths of various battalions being lost. And maybe it's a little profiteering, but the game should be able to exist, obviously, and people can just make a decision whether or not they want to play it. But, of course, games media can't allow any game to exist without saying that it must be forcing a political, must be political. They tried this with Tom Clancy. They've tried it with every major game. And studios that don't want to divide their customers, I like to call these good business people, generally push back against this kind of stuff, while games journalists push to try and say, but isn't it saying what we want it to say? You can see Charlie Hall at Polygon, 6 Days in Fallujah, quote, not trying to make political commentary, creator says. An interview with the publisher of the controversial game. Now, again, and you're going to have Neil Druckman chiming in and Cory Barlog. These two are people that are far lefties who live politics all day long. And look, I'm going to be kind to Neil because, he was kind to me. I railed on him for months. And when Indy passed away, he sent me a very nice note, and he definitely didn't have to do that. So sorry if you called me a weenie for that, but I'm gonna roast him lightly, a light roast, not anything too spicy. But you can see, those looking for a critical perspective of the situation should steer clear of 6 Days in Fallujah. The controversial FPS seeks to portray one of the roughest battles in American history, one that cost the lives of U.S. and allied forces as well as thousands of citizens in 2004. Originally announced in 2009, the game was dropped by publisher Konami due to objections of the families of service members who didn't make it out. In the 12 years since, public opinion has demonstrably shifted against that war. Everybody should have been against it. I was against it at the time. I'm still against it. There should have been nobody who was for that. It was one of the most ridiculous excuses. Did they ever find those WMDs there, Bush? Anyway, that makes a job of Peter Tempt, head of 6 Days in Fallujah publisher Victura, perhaps harder today than it was more than a decade ago. In an interview with Polygon on Thursday after the game was announced for the second time, he was insistent that developer Highwire Games will not grapple with the political machinations that led to the conflict. Instead, their FPS will try to engender empathy for American troops in the field for their work destroying the insurgents that dug in throughout Fallujah and for the civilians trapped between them. Quote, I think it's reasonable People can disagree with that, he told Polygon of his narrative strategy. For us as a team, it really is about helping the players understand the complexity of urban combat. It's about the experience of that individual that is now there because of political decisions. And we do want to show how choices that are made by policymakers and we do want to show how choices by policymakers affect the choices that a Marine needs to make on the battlefield. Just as the Marine cannot second guess the choices by policymakers, we're not trying to make any political commentary about whether or not the battle itself was good or a bad idea. And they, of course, they'll never be satisfied with this. It's kind of a dodge that we've heard from game makers before, most recently from Ubisoft in the lead up to Tom Clancy's The Division 2, but that game's conflict was wholly fictional one. 6 Days in Fallujah recalls a battle that still looms large in the rearview mirror of the country's headlong push in the Middle East, a tragic event seemingly on the cusp between current events and modern history. Its main characters will be real Marines and soldiers who fought there. I mean, I think obviously there's value in preserving history. I think that this game can be done in a way that respects the stress and loss and damage that happened there. And it can do all of that without having to say war bad. I think, there's a lot of people, in modern games journalism and in game development who think their product is like this life-altering thing. And it can be for some people. There are certain video games that can, change somebody's life. It can come around at the right time and change an opinion. And I think that's reasonable. But to ignore the fact that the overwhelming majority of people play video games for this thing called fun or this other thing called escapism, and pretend that you're creating this masterpiece of artwork that will be remembered for the ages. I'm sorry, but no, video games will not go down next to Picasso's paintings or Greek sculptures. It's just never going to happen. But there are a lot of game developers that think that this way. They think that they're creating some kind of high art. Obviously, the events that happened, wherever you land on them, that's for you to discuss or to decide. But again, is it the duty of a video game? No. Does a video game have to make a political point? No, it doesn't. But for games journalists who really wish they were actual journalists, this is all they can write about it. The game he describes seems to have a narrow appeal. Are you interested in the nuts and bolts of clearing a room filled of bad guys, then step up and prepare to get your heart torn out one way or another? I think the game looks high intensity. I'd probably play it. I'd probably try it. But you can see here, the only thing that I fear is that fundamentally, when we cut through everything, people's objection here to 6 Days in Fallujah is more of an objection to everything that actually happened. The decision to go over to Iraq, Tempty said. We've made games about other wars and real stories from other wars that have not gotten the attention and not have gotten any sort of controversy. So fundamentally, people's objection is to the Iraq War. I don't think we should be a proxy for that particular battle. And I agree. But then you have like Corey Barlog here, who of course, says, the best stories I've experienced were told through fearlessness and passion, exposing the good, bad, and ugly of the characters in the world they live in. I'm thankful to every character who followed their inner voice through the uncertain darkness to realize their vision. Cringe, bro. You make video games, all right? You're not exactly creating anything that's changing society as much as you'd want. And this is really in response to Neil Druckman's subtweet about the game, saying, if your game deals with serious subject matter, then it is inherently political. If that's a problem, make a different game. Otherwise, you owe it to the game to lean into it, doing your darndest to treat as honestly, completely as possible, warts and all. Yeah, maybe. I think if you are reenacting this, you should obviously, do it as accurately as possible. But that doesn't make the game, that doesn't mean the game has to make some sort of political statement. The game doesn't have to tell the consumer whether it's good or bad. They can just enjoy the game and decide for themselves. A big problem is the ego of a lot of these creators think that they're just so smart and so ascended that, you know, it's their job to educate the plebs. Most people who play video games just want to do it as a little escape. You don't, I mean, if you honestly think that people are playing Call of Duty and like, oh yeah, you know, this is an allegory on this or that, or nobody's doing that. You know, outside of maybe a half a percentage of people who are paid to do that. Most people play the games because they're high octane. They can pop in and pop out, and they can get some entertainment out of it. My guess is tons of military people will play this game. You could see, yes, a different game like Ghost of Tsushima, no politics, just pure history, rich culture, awesome storyline, and on top of it, free multiplayer. It's getting roasted by Ghost of Tsushima players, of course. Remember the same person, Last of Us 2 fans, activate as a bonus. Every vote you cast for The Last of Us Part 2, a hater loses their caps lock. You know, again, if you want to see the politics in something, you can find it. I mean, I don't think anyone is denying that. But the idea that a video game has to take a stand is an absurd elitist position. And you see Neil saying here, you know, that, oh, Far Cry and Hellblade and all these other games, Spec Ops, they were political. You can see, turns out you can make serious games without any politics involved. Neil says, oh, but those are politics. Again, if you are somebody who deeply thirsts to make everything political, you can make Mario Brothers political, okay? That's not the point. The point is that's not a requirement of the video game developer, and that's not necessarily a good thing. Consumers don't necessarily love being told what's right and wrong by some, like, game dev off in Silicon Valley. I hope you enjoyed this video. Will you be playing this game? Does it interest you? Or do you think that it's too soon? I'll be interested to read your comments in the comment section down below. We'll talk to you again real soon.